Before streaming services and CGI, one German Shepherd captured America's heart with tales of frontier heroism. But behind the scenes lurked strange casting swaps, historical impossibilities, tragic child star endings, and a dog who lived 90 miles away from his own show. Here are the 15 weird facts you didn't know about the adventures of Rin Tin Tin. Fact 1. The star dog was a complete imposter. The adventures of Rin Tin Tin had a dirty little secret that producers kept hidden from millions of viewers for years. The famous German Shepherd they promoted as the star of the show barely appeared in a single episode. Rin Tin Tin IV, the direct descendant of the legendary silent film star, was supposed to carry on his great-grandfather's legacy on television, but there was just one problem. He couldn't act to save his life. When producer Herbert Leonard and dog owner Lee Duncan brought Rin Tin Tin IV in for screen tests in the early 1950s, the results were disastrous. The dog that was supposed to embody decades of Hollywood history simply didn't have what it took to perform on camera. He lacked the responsiveness, the timing, and the natural ability that had made the original Rin Tin Tin a star. Rather than scrap the entire project or admit defeat, the producers made a decision that would fool audiences for the show's entire 5-season run. They secretly replaced Rin Tin Tin IV with a dog named Flame Jr., owned by professional animal trainer Frank Barnes. Flame Jr., who went by the nickname JR, was completely unrelated to the famous Rin Tin Tin bloodline, but he had something more important. He could actually perform. Nearly every scene viewers watched featured Flame Jr. doing the work, while the show's publicity materials continued promoting Rin Tin Tin IV as the star. The public was led to believe they were watching canine royalty, a direct link to Hollywood's golden age, when in reality they were watching a talented imposter who just happened to look the part. Barnes also used other dogs, including one named Blaze, for certain scenes, but Flame Jr. did the vast majority of the on-screen work that made the show a success. Fact 2. The show's historical setting is biologically impossible. Here's a weird fact that somehow slipped past every writer, producer, and historical consultant on the adventures of Rin Tin Tin. The show features a dog breed that literally didn't exist during the time period it depicts. The series takes place in the Old West during the 1860s and 1870s, with President Ulysses S. Grant even making appearances in Season 2, Episode 7, firmly establishing the timeline between 1869 and 1877. There's just one rather significant problem with this setting. German Shepherds weren't developed as a breed until 1899, more than 2 decades after the show's latest possible date. The German Shepherd breed was created by a German cavalry officer named Max von Stephanitz, who spent years selectively breeding various German herding dogs to create what he considered the ideal working dog. The first official German Shepherd wasn't recognized until April of 1899, when von Stephanitz registered a dog named Horrend von Grafrath as the foundation of the new breed. This means that every single episode of The Adventures of Rin Tin Tin features a historical impossibility, a dog that travels through time before it technically existed. This anachronism becomes even more glaring when you consider how distinctive German Shepherds are compared to other dog breeds of that era. Viewers watching Fort Apache's cavalry soldiers patrol the Arizona Territory alongside their trusty German Shepherd were essentially watching science fiction without realizing it. The show might as well have featured Rusty and Rinty communicating by cell phone or traveling in a Jeep. It's the equivalent of a Western featuring a character driving a car decades before automobiles were invented, yet somehow this biological impossibility never sparked any controversy or concern during the show's original run or in the decades of reruns that followed. Fact 3. Actors fought themselves on camera. Budget constraints can lead to creative solutions in television production, but the adventures of Rin Tin took cost-cutting to bizarre extremes that sometimes resulted in actors literally fighting themselves on screen. with Screen Gems limiting the show's budget to less than $50,000 per episode. The production employed a small repertory troupe of just 12 character actors who were expected to fill every single supporting role across all 164 episodes. This meant that the same faces appeared over and over again throughout the series, but not always as the same characters. Actors would play a friendly storekeeper in one episode, a menacing outlaw in another, and a helpful cavalry officer in a third. But the real absurdity happened when the production schedule got tight, and an actor would be required to play multiple roles within the same episode. Since the show frequently featured conflicts between cavalry soldiers and Apache warriors, the same actor might appear as a uniformed cavalry trooper in one scene, then quickly change into Apache clothing and makeup to appear as a Native American warrior in the very next sequence. The most ridiculous situations occurred during battle scenes where careful viewers could potentially spot the same actor fighting himself, appearing as a soldier in a blue uniform in one shot, then as his opponent in traditional Apache attire in another, all within the same action sequence. The production relied heavily on quick costume changes, strategic camera angles, and the hope that viewers watching on small black and white television screens in the 1950s wouldn't notice the same faces appearing on both sides of the ticketed conflict. This practice of actors fighting themselves became a poorly kept secret among the cast and crew, a strange reality of low-budget television production that somehow contributed to creating one of the most popular shows of its era. Fact 4. The TV show started with a $10 handshake. Some of television's biggest hits started with million-dollar contracts and teams of lawyers negotiating every detail. But the adventures of Rin Tin Tin began with one of the most informal business deals in Hollywood history, a handshake and $10. This unlikely partnership between two very different men would create a show that became the second highest rated series on ABC during its first season. But it all started with the most casual of agreements. In September of 1953, a stuntman who knew Lee Duncan from his days training dogs in Hollywood decided to bring along a young production manager named Herbert Leonard when he visited Duncan's ranch. Duncan had been trying unsuccessfully to revive the Rin Tin Tin franchise after the original dog's film career ended decades earlier, while Leonard was an ambitious producer looking for his first major project. On paper, the two men had almost nothing in common. Duncan was a quiet, solitary Western cowboy who preferred the company of his dogs and horses to people, while Leonard was a loud, gregarious New Yorker who gambled, smoked cigars while playing tennis, and had absolutely no interest in dogs before that day. Despite these differences, something clicked between them immediately. The very next day, while managing production on a low-budget thriller called Slaves of Babylon, Leonard used his lunch break to write up his concept for The Adventures of Rin Tin Tin, a show about an orphaned boy and his dog being adopted by a United States cavalry unit at Fort Apache. Duncan and Leonard made their agreement to produce the series right there, sealing the deal with a handshake, and Leonard paying Duncan an initial sum of just $10 for the rights to use the Rin Tin Tin name and character. No lawyers, no contracts, no negotiations, just two men trusting each other to create something special, which they did. Fact 5. The original movie dog allegedly died in Jean Harlow's arms. Hollywood loves a good death scene, and the story of how the original Rin Tin Tin died in 1932 became one of the industry's most enduring legends, except it probably never happened the way everyone claims. According to the romantic tale that circulated for decades, the famous German Shepherd died cradled in the arms of platinum blonde movie star Jean Harlow, creating a cinematic ending worthy of the dog who had saved Warner Brothers from bankruptcy. It's the kind of story that seems almost too perfect, and that's because it probably is. The legend goes that Rin Tin Tin was either on set filming Pride of the Legion or at Harlow's home when he suddenly collapsed, and the glamorous actress rushed to hold him as he took his final breath. Newspapers across the country picked up various versions of this story, with some claiming it happened on a movie set, others saying it was in Harlow's home, and still others insisting it occurred on Duncan's front lawn. The press agents of the era fabricated multiple versions of the story, each more dramatic than the last, because Hollywood understood the value of a legendary death scene. What actually happened was far less dramatic, but probably closer to the truth. Lee Duncan's own unpublished memoir tells a very different story. On August 10, 1932, Duncan was at his home on Clubview Drive in Los Angeles when he heard Rin Tin Tin bark in a peculiar, unusual way. He immediately went to investigate and found his beloved dog lying on the ground, moments away from death. Duncan was with him in those final moments, not Jean Harlow. The actress did live on the same street and owned one of Rin Tin Tin's puppies, which probably explains how she got tangled up in the mythology. But the romantic story of Hollywood's biggest canine star dying in a movie star's arms was just another piece of publicity fiction. Fact 6. Child star Lee Acker lost the Lassie role. 2 weeks before Rin Tin Tin, sometimes losing out on your dream job leads to something even better. And that's exactly what happened to young Lee Acker in 1953 and 1954. The child actor found himself competing for one of the most coveted roles in television, the boy who would star alongside Lassie, the most famous dog in entertainment. Despite his talent and experience in films like Hondo with John Wayne and The Atomic City with Gene Barry, Acker didn't get the part. The role of Jeff Miller went to another young actor named Tommy Rettig, and Acker must have thought he'd missed his big break. But just 2 weeks after losing the Lassie audition, Acker found himself cast as Rusty in The Adventures of Rin Tin Tin, a role that would define his career and make him a household name to millions of children across America. Both shows premiered in 1954 and became instant hits, with The Adventures of Rin Tin Tin finishing as the second highest rated show on ABC, behind only Disneyland during its first season. Rather than becoming rivals, Acker and Rettig became close friends, bonding over their shared experiences as child actors starring in popular dog shows. The two boys and their famous canine co-stars became so associated with each other that TV Guide decided to feature all four of them together on the cover of its July 2nd through 8th, 1955 issue. The photograph showed Lassie and Tommy Rettig alongside Rin Tin Tin and Lee Acker, celebrating two of television's most popular series and the young stars who helped make them successful. It's a perfect example of how Hollywood works in mysterious ways. Acker lost one iconic dog show only to land another equally successful one just weeks later, and instead of creating bad blood, the situation created a lasting friendship between two boys navigating the strange world of child stardom together. Fact 7. The actual star dog lived 90 miles away from set. Imagine if the star of a hit television show never actually showed up for work, and that's essentially what happened with The Adventures of Rin Tin Tin. While Rin Tin Tin IV was being promoted as the famous canine leading the show, he spent his days about 90 miles away from where the actual filming took place, living a comfortable life at a ranch in Riverside, California, completely uninvolved in the production that bore his ancestor's name. The Corriganville Movie Ranch in Simi Valley, where all the outdoor action scenes were shot, never saw Rin Tin Tin IV performing his supposed heroic deeds. Instead, Flame Jr. and the other replacement dogs, owned by trainer Frank Barnes, did all the actual work, while the real descendant of the legendary movie star stayed home. But here's where the situation gets even stranger. Fans didn't know any of this. The publicity machine kept promoting Rin Tin Tin IV as the star, and his Riverside Ranch became something of a tourist destination for devoted viewers of the show. Families would make the trip to Riverside specifically to see the famous dog from their favorite television program, completely unaware that the animal they were visiting had barely appeared in a single episode. They would take photographs, get autographs, and tell their friends back home about meeting the heroic German Shepherd who saved Rusty and the cavalry soldiers every week. The ranch owners and handlers played along with the deception, allowing visitors to meet Rin Tin Tin IV and believe they were encountering television royalty. In reality, if those fans had wanted to meet the actual star of the show, they would have needed to track down Flame Jr. and Frank Barnes instead. It was one of the most successful cases of false advertising in television history, maintained throughout the show's entire 5-season run and for years afterward in reruns, with no one ever publicly calling out the deception. Fact 8. The show was completely repackaged in brown tint with color bookends. By the mid-1970s, The Adventures of Rin Tin Tin was nearly 2 decades old, and producer Herbert Leonard wanted to find a way to make the black and white series feel fresh for a new generation of viewers. His solution was one of the strangest repackaging attempts in television history, tinting all 164 episodes in sepia brown and creating new color segments to bookend each episode, essentially trying to bridge the gap between the old and the new. Leonard managed to convince actor James Brown, who had played Lieutenant Ripmasters during the show's original run from 1954 to 1959, to return to his famous role for newly filmed wraparound segments. These new scenes were shot in color in Utah during 1975, with Brown appearing in character to introduce and close out each episode, providing a modern frame for the vintage stories. It was a clever concept that could have given the series a new lease on life, but there was just one problem. Leonard could only afford to complete 22 of these color wraparounds, despite needing 164 to cover the entire series. This meant that only 22 episodes received the full treatment with new color bookends, while all 164 episodes got the sepia tinting whether they had the wraparounds or not. The tinted episodes gave the show an old-fashioned, nostalgic look that was supposed to appeal to viewers in the 1970s and early 1980s, but the inconsistency of the color segments created a confusing viewing experience. Some episodes would start with James Brown in vibrant 1970s color, then cut to brown-tinted footage from 20 years earlier, while other episodes just jumped straight into the sepia-toned action without any introduction. The repackaging effort never achieved the success Leonard hoped for, and poor scheduling by local stations meant the reruns failed to find a significant audience despite all the effort and expense. Fact 9. 65 episodes were fully colorized but never aired. Herbert Leonard's attempts to revitalize the adventures of Rin Tin Tin didn't stop with sepia tinting and color wraparounds. In the late 1970s, he managed to convince someone to invest in an even more ambitious and expensive project, fully colorizing 65 episodes of the series using the technology available at the time. This was years before the colorization controversy that would erupt in the 1980s over Ted Turner's efforts to colorize classic films, and Leonard believed he had found the key to making Rin Tin Tin relevant for a new generation of viewers raised on color television. The colorization process was painstaking and expensive, involving technicians manually adding color information to each frame of the black and white footage. For 65 episodes, someone funded this labor-intensive process, transforming the cavalry uniforms, the Arizona landscapes, and even Rin Tin Tin himself from shades of gray into full color. Leonard then took these colorized episodes and edited 5 of them together to create a feature-length film, believing he could market it as a Rin Tin Tin movie for theatrical release or television broadcast. He had invested significant time and someone else's money into this project, confident that stations and distributors would jump at the chance to air colorized versions of a beloved classic series. But nobody wanted them. Leonard approached syndication companies, television stations, and film distributors, but he couldn't find anyone willing to take on the colorized episodes. The timing was wrong, the market wasn't interested, or perhaps the colorization quality wasn't good enough to justify the expense. Whatever the reason, all 65 colorized episodes remained on the shelf, never broadcast to the public. The feature film compilation he created from 5 edited episodes also failed to find a distributor. Decades of work and significant financial investment resulted in a product that no one ever saw, making this one of the most expensive failures in the Rin Tin Tin franchise's long history. Fact Chapter 10. The child star died alone and indigent. Lee Oiker's story is one of Hollywood's most tragic examples of how child stardom can lead to a devastating adulthood. The young boy who charmed millions of viewers as Rusty from 1954 to 1959, appearing in all 164 episodes of The Adventures of Rin Tin Tin, ended up dying alone and penniless more than 6 decades later, listed on his death certificate as an indigent decedent. During the show's run, Oiker started at just $250 per episode, with his salary eventually increasing to $500 per episode by the final season. Not exactly a fortune even by 1950s standards. When he turned 21, the studio that produced Rin Tin Tin gave him a lump sum payment of $10,000, and Oiker later admitted he spent the rest of the 1960s traveling around the world as sort of a flower child. He couldn't find work as an adult actor, which was a common fate for child stars of that era, and eventually left Hollywood entirely. He worked as a carpenter for about 20 years and spent time as a ski instructor at Mammoth Mountain in California, teaching underprivileged children and people with disabilities, living on his $1,500 monthly Screen Actors Guild pension. But Oiker struggled with drug and alcohol abuse throughout his life, and by the time he reached his 70s, he was in terrible shape. Paul Peterson, a former child actor from The Donna Reed Show who became an advocate for former child actors, described Oiker's final years as desperately lonely and impoverished. On April 1, 2021, Oiker suffered a stroke and died near Mesa, Arizona, at the age of 77. He died alone, with only one surviving relative who couldn't help him and was officially listed as indigent on his death certificate. Peterson worked to arrange a proper burial for Oiker, who was entitled to be interred at the National Memorial Cemetery of Arizona in Phoenix due to his service as a United States Air Force veteran during the Vietnam War. Fact 11. The show's budget forced actors into bizarre vocal duties. When you're producing a television show with a budget of less than $50,000 per episode, every penny counts. And sometimes that means asking your actors to do things that fall far outside their normal job descriptions. The Adventures of Rin. Tintin had such tight financial constraints that the production couldn't always afford professional sound effects technicians or the time and equipment necessary to properly capture animal sounds during filming. This led to at least one very strange production credit that reveals just how makeshift some aspects of the show really were. Actor Hal Hopper, who played Corporal Clark in 14 episodes of the series between 1955 and 1958, received an unusual credit in one episode from 1955. He was listed as providing special vocal effects. While the exact nature of these vocal effects isn't explicitly documented, the most logical explanation given the show's context is that Hopper was literally making dog-barking sounds and other animal noises to fill in when the actual dogs weren't cooperating or when the production needed specific sounds that were difficult or expensive to capture on set. This wasn't uncommon in low-budget productions of the era, where human actors would often provide animal sounds rather than hiring specialized voice actors or spending money on elaborate sound recording equipment and sessions. Radio programs of the 1930s had actually featured Rin Tin Tin's barks being performed by sound effects crew members rather than actual dogs, so there was precedent for this practice. The idea of a uniformed cavalry corporal stepping off camera to bark like a German shepherd in order to save a few dollars perfectly captures the scrappy, make-it-work-with-what-you-have attitude that characterized television production in the 1950s, especially for shows that weren't given generous budgets despite their popularity with audiences. Fact 12. President Ulysses S. Grant made multiple fort appearances. Most frontier cavalry forts would be lucky to receive a visit from a territorial governor, let alone the President of the United States. But Fort Apache in The Adventures of Rin Tin Tin apparently had such importance that President Ulysses S. Grant made multiple personal visits during his time in office. Actor Paul Birch portrayed Grant in at least 2 episodes of the series, Rin Tin Tin Meets Mr. President in 1955 and Presidential Citation in 1956, bringing an unusual amount of presidential gravitas to what was essentially a children's adventure show. In Rin Tin Tin Meets Mr. President, the plot revolves around President Grant stopping by Fort Apache on his way to Mesa Grande, with Rusty and Rinty discovering and foiling an assassination plot against him. This wasn't just a brief cameo. Grant was a significant character in the episode, interacting extensively with Rusty and even awarding the young corporal special recognition. The 1956 episode Presidential Citation featured Grant again, this time dealing with a reckless general whose actions threatened to destroy a fragile peace accord with Apache tribes, with Rusty contacting the president directly to intervene after Lieutenant Ripmasters resigns in disgust. Paul Birch made a career out of playing President Grant, reprising the role in other television westerns of the era, including Wagon Train and Black Saddle. But his multiple appearances on Rin Tin Tin pushed the boundaries of credibility even for a children's show. The idea that a small cavalry outpost in the Arizona Territory would receive repeated personal visits from the sitting President of the United States and that a young orphan boy would have direct access to contact Grant whenever problems arose stretched historical plausibility to the breaking point. But for young viewers in the 1950s, it simply reinforced that Fort Apache and its residents were incredibly important, worthy of presidential attention. Fact 13. The show used the same Fort Apache set. From the John Wayne film, The Adventures of Rin Tin Tin owes its entire existence to producer Herbert Leonard eating lunch in the right place at the right time. While working as a production manager at Columbia Pictures in the early 1950s, Leonard spent a day at the Corriganville Movie Ranch in Simi Valley, California, a popular filming location about 30 miles northwest of Los Angeles. The ranch had been used for countless westerns and adventure films, but one particular set caught Leonard's attention during his lunch break, an elaborate Fort Apache set that had been built for director John Ford's 1948 cavalry western starring John Wayne, Henry Fonda, and Shirley Temple. As Leonard sat there eating his lunch and looking at the fort's walls, buildings, and parade grounds, the entire concept for The Adventures of Rin Tin Tin suddenly came together in his mind. He could see how this authentic-looking military outpost could serve as the perfect setting for a television series about a boy and his dog living among cavalry soldiers. The fort was already built, which would save enormous amounts of money on construction costs, and the Corriganville Ranch had plenty of surrounding terrain perfect for outdoor action sequences. 2 weeks later, Leonard had connected with Lee Duncan and secured the rights to use the Rin Tin Tin name, and the show was built entirely around that Fort Apache location. Throughout all 5 seasons and 164 episodes, the production made extensive use of the Fort Apache set, with additional outdoor action scenes filmed at the nearby Iverson Movie Ranch in Chatsworth, which was famous for its dramatic sandstone boulders and rock formations. The Iverson Ranch was actually the most heavily filmed outdoor location in Hollywood history, appearing in countless westerns, serials, and adventure shows. Between these 2 ranches, The Adventures of Rin Tin Tin had everything it needed to create its vision of the Old West without ever leaving the Los Angeles area, and it all started because Herbert Leonard decided to eat his lunch while sitting near a movie set. Fact 14. Nabisco turned the show into a pommes. Merchandising empire The Adventures of Rin Tin Tin wasn't just a television show. It was a merchandising phenomenon that turned breakfast cereal into a pipeline for military equipment, all thanks to the National Biscuit Company, better known as Nabisco. As the show's primary sponsor, Nabisco recognized the commercial potential of millions of children wanting to be just like Rusty and the cavalry soldiers of Fort Apache, and they created an elaborate system of merchandise that transformed shredded wheat purchases into a complete cavalry experience. Nabisco inserted special premium coupons and order forms directly into boxes of shredded wheat and other cereals throughout the mid to late 1950s. Children could collect these coupons and mail them in along with small payments, often just 50 cents, plus a box top, to receive official Rin Tin Tin merchandise. The catalog of available items was extensive and specifically designed to appeal to kids who wanted to play cavalry soldier. You could order a 101st Cavalry bugle to sound commands, just like the soldiers on the show. Various toy guns modeled after cavalry weapons, mess kits for outdoor adventures, leather belts with special metal buckles featuring Rin Tin Tin imagery, and even official canteens marked with the show's branding. The genius of this merchandising system was that it created a continuous loop of consumption. Kids would buy shredded wheat to get the coupons, then need to buy more cereal to get more coupons for additional items, all while watching the show every week that reminded them how badly they wanted this merchandise. Nabisco essentially turned their cereal boxes into armories, with parents finding themselves purchasing wheat-based breakfast food so their children could assemble complete cavalry outfits piece by piece through the mail. It was one of the most successful merchandise tie-ins of the 1950s, predating the massive toy-driven marketing campaigns that would become standard practice in later decades. Fact 15. A 1990s revival killed off a character due to Christian viewer complaints. More than 3 decades after the adventures of Rin Tin had ended, Herbert Leonard attempted to revive the franchise with a Canadian television series called Cats and Dog, which aired from 1988 to 1993. The show featured a police officer and his canine partner in modern-day adventures, and it was broadcast in the United States as Rin Tin Tin, Canine Cop, while being called Rin Tin Tin Jr. in France. Leonard secured funding from an unlikely source, the Christian Broadcasting Network, whose founder, televangelist Pat Robertson, was enthusiastic about bringing back the Rin Tin Tin name for a new generation. But the partnership between Leonard and Robertson's network hit a major problem partway through the first season. The show's plot involved a widowed mother living in the same house as her late husband's brother. And, while this was a fairly innocent living arrangement necessary for the show's family dynamic, some of the Christian Broadcasting Network's viewers were deeply troubled by the situation. They saw an unmarried man and woman living under the same roof and complained that this arrangement was inappropriate and sent the wrong message, regardless of the familial relationship and the context of the widow trying to raise her children with family support. Pat Robertson himself contacted Leonard with a recommendation that seemed to come straight out of a dark comedy. He suggested they kill off the mother character to resolve the viewers' moral concerns and stop the flood of complaints. Leonard was horrified by this suggestion and protested vehemently against making such a drastic change to the show's premise just to appease some overly sensitive viewers. The disagreement escalated to the point where Leonard quit the production entirely, unwilling to compromise his creative vision to satisfy what he saw as ridiculous complaints. But after Leonard's departure, the production went ahead and killed off the mother character anyway, just as Robertson had recommended. Despite being separated from the show, Leonard continued receiving fees for the screen rights to Rin Tin Tin throughout the series' remaining run.